Hello, I'm Thomas Haire, Chief Content Officer of the Performance-Driven Marketing Institute, a not-for-profit trade association that serves companies in the performance and direct-to-consumer marketing world. Welcome to the latest episode of Take 20, created by the PDMI's Brand Response Council. These 20-minute live conversations featuring leaders in the performance marketing world speaking about the hottest topics in the industry are scheduled twice a month, and in this month, when it's September 1st, 3 times a month. Before we get to today's conversation, a housekeeping note, we'll be addressing all of your questions from the audience at the end of today's session, but you don't have to wait to ask them. Utilize the questions tab on your control panel to type and send your question in. We'll be collecting them and try to get to as many as possible in the final moments of the episode. Today's episode is the second in our Back to series, Back to School. Kids are getting back into the classroom across most of the nation in their own different ways, not only in K through 12, but also in college. About 20 million college students are heading back to campuses, spending money to do so, and beginning final preparations to enter the workforce in the coming years. What challenges has this back-to-school season brought marketers, brands, and media, and how are many leaders in performance marketing dealing with these changes in their own homes, actually? Here to discuss the landscape are two members of the PDMI's Brand Response Council, Dan Kelly, a director at Dish Media, and Mark Sullivan, Vice President of Converged Ad Sales at ViacomCBS. Gentlemen, welcome. Glad to have you here. Let's get to it. Mark, I'm going to go to you first here. Obviously, as we just said, this has been a year like no other for back to school. It's been waiting almost 2 years for this back to school, I guess. And what has it meant for media and brands? And what have you seen on your outlets that's been affected by this kind of unprecedented transition?
Thank you, Tom. Our research has shown us here at ViacomCBS that parents are excited for their kids to get back to face-to-face learning, back on a regular schedule. They're less anxious, and that is translated into, again, as our research has shown, back-to-school spending is up 8% year over year, with a big lift for department stores. 25% of that year-over-year growth has been within Macy's and the like. Also, mass merchants like a Walmart and online retailers have seen huge year-over-year growth, which is not surprising as we're getting, I wouldn't say, it doesn't seem like it's a regular schedule across the country. It's somewhat of a mixed bag, but it's way more than a year ago. Back to parents seem much more excited about face-to-face. So, and what does that mean for certain categories? That are 2 years ago, we wouldn't thought of the PPE category being something that is, part of back to school, with seemingly, masks being worn in the majority of the schools for the kids across the country, packaged goods in terms of hand sanitizer and cleansing wipes and things like that. So it's definitely interesting if you were to go back 2 years and compare the two. But again, on a straight basis, year over year, where we're seeing high single-digit growth in back to school spending and positive reaction from parents getting the kids back to face-to-face learning.
That's great. That's great. Dan, what are you guys seeing?
We're seeing, the season tends to be getting longer and longer. First of all, more and more schools going back early August. So it seems to be getting earlier and earlier each year. And, to Mark's point, there was excitement, but then also some concern around the going back. Some states a little bit more than others. So, we've definitely seen a return from spenders, in the category in previous years, but then we're also seeing like a little bit of a difference in some of those spends. With some folks being reluctant to go back to the mall to go pick up stuff, we're definitely seeing a growth of the D2C. Where people are, even the traditional stores that are highlighting their online capabilities and also promoting a lot of the shop online and then pick up in store. But I'd say that's probably been the biggest shift that we're seeing this year, with obviously increase over the year last year because of the lack of return. So not only are they back, but they're back in different ways.
That makes sense. I think, we talked briefly before this, and Mark, you brought up PPE as a brand new market really for back to school. There's other brand new markets driven by what's happened here, including technology. With the questions about kids going back, but then maybe having to jump back out to online or at-home learning if there's a COVID outbreak. That means technology is theoretically going to get a boost here as people look at what their kids need to work from home. Are there other, talk about that if you can, but also are there any other markets or verticals that we can think of that might be affected by this?
We a few other stats that our research is showing us in terms of devices. 6 in 10 parents think devices are here to stay in school, and 1 in 5 think they're even at a younger age they're here to stay. I think again, as we beating around the bush on face-to-face and regular schedule, it may not be a regular schedule like it was 2 years ago, right? Pre-COVID. I know with my middle schooler and our elementary school kids, they have to, the whole school has to test before they go back in next week, right? And they'll have some effect on if asymptomatic testing. How about that category, the testing category, right? That's now back. That seemed to have somewhat gone away, maybe June and July, and now that's back anyway. I guess is that considered a PPE? I don't know whether healthcare. I guess that's a healthcare category. But
yeah, I guess
anyway.
That's healthcare. I mean, you get the 2 for 25 test at CVS, right? So that's actually very true.
Not to be off topic, but
I guess like the healthcare has definitely been an increase over the last 2 months that we've seen. So I mean, the messaging isn't necessarily about back to school, but the companies are definitely highlighted. Like they seem to be a little bit more active in this time period based upon the fact that they know the consumers' concerns are there.
Makes sense.
Yeah, we're seeing that as well. Yeah, but the subscription. Sorry, Tyler. Just quickly, the subscription-based, schools that have a hybrid learning model are allowing hybrid, right, throughout the country, which there are. There's certainly some that are. The subscription-based online learning apps or that category we've seen a growth. We've seen it in my own house, and we're seeing it. I'm seeing it in the advertising as well. That's the subscription-based model is going to in the online learning space will continue to I think see substantial growth.
Right. Shifting up to college age folks, obviously 20 million kids going back to school in some form or fashion. They've been distance learning, online learning for a while now. Think about online learning or online-based colleges? Think about the advertisers that have been out there, the national universities, the Southern New Hampshire universities, and those folks. Are they attempting to capitalize here? What about community colleges as kids maybe don't feel the need to spend big dollars at a big 4-year school and can save money for 2 years before jumping into the 4-year school? Are those colleges capitalizing on this at all? Dan, I'll go to you first.
I'd say it's definitely an interesting kind of growth. For the national ones, we've kind of seen a consistent level of spend, so they're not necessarily kind of as populated now. But a newer category for us was definitely the state schools. And, we have a couple of campaigns for a few states right now that are highlighting their community colleges and their ability to do kind of like the hybrid learning, where the messaging kind of does point out the fact that your community college will be a little bit more of a cost-efficient route to go, if not going to the classrooms or, to the safety kind of measure to feel more comfortable, and then highlighting their transfer rates into major university programs, like the Cal system and things like that. So that was definitely a newer kind of thing that we've seen over the last year. New kind of category outside of the national brands that have been and continue to spend And they've been, smart about like what they're utilizing to retarget, as well as kind of like re-engage with some of the folks that, being an online university, they have great data sets. So we're able to work with them on recapturing folks that maybe have went a little dormant.
Right. Mark, what about you? You seeing anything there?
Yeah, the spend in that category, interesting enough, has been consistent. I wouldn't say, because I'm national, we're with our team is national linear cable, right? We're not dealing it from a market-to-market perspective. So from a national perspective, across our cable networks, we've seen the spend has been fairly consistent over the past year. There hasn't seemed to be a certain time where it's exploded or retracted. I would say it's been consistent with the past 12, 15 months.
Right. This is more of a broad question, but I think it's going to eventually laser down to what you guys are experiencing in your own homes. The return to school is also affecting parents in that their kids are out of the house for the first time in 18 months, right? Consistently, on a consistent basis. How do you think that's going to affect those parents as consumers? And how can performance marketers reach those consumers who theoretically may have more time to hear those messages?
I mean, outside of White Claw and beer sales up, it's a little bit of a different kind of approach with kids back in the classroom. We're definitely seeing the need for marketers to remind folks of last minute items that they can kind of go pick up, remind them that the easy accessibility of the stores and things like that. But parents as consumers, I think they'd already kind of returned. It's just a matter of, perhaps for some of the stay-at-home folks and things like that, a little bit more larger windows of time to do some of that retail shopping that might not be available. So, but we haven't really necessarily seen an influx of, messaging around specifically to the parent that might have a little bit more time and sanity at home as the kids have gone back to the classroom.
Right. Mark, anything on that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think the viewing habits in the household may change a little bit, right? Because we've just gone through, again, as Dan said, kids are going back to school at all different times, seemingly way more so than I ever recall in the past. But and I know kids get out of school at some point. But anyway, roughly, let's say summer is 2 months long. The viewing habits in my household for the last 2 months are going to somewhat change when next Thursday rolls around and they're back to school. And so working from home, and I'm not sure that I'll just take it from personal experience. We were on a hybrid schedule last year for the most part, so there was somebody in our house most of the time, and they're supposed to be virtually learning, but that wasn't full on the case the whole time. But I think it'll be interesting to see. I think viewing habits will somewhat change. Maybe the Today Show goes back on the air as opposed to another channel, but not to call out certain shows. But I think that'll be interesting. But I think Dan mentioned this right in the beginning that the D2C overall, I mean every category is just that has been exploding. I think we'll continue to see that, and that speaks 95% of the cases speak directly to parents for the most part. I mean not all, but a large number of them do. And I don't know if the messaging will change, but I for one hope we see influx of those ads coming up here as we embark upon a different countrywide, somewhat of an interesting with hybrid kids back to school, and which wasn't always the case in the past year and a half, and parents working from home, which would be somewhat of a different model.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see the brands that are balancing the D2C aspect of their company as opposed to, the traditional kind of co-op, advertising that they used to be doing. They're definitely still promoting the stores and things that you can go into, especially if they're part of a larger store, like if their brand is in a Walmart or a Target. they're still advertising, but then they're also balancing that with allowing folks to go directly, from your house. And I think that's only going to continue. An interesting category for that has definitely been sneakers. A lot of sneaker brands definitely doing a lot more in the D2C world and evolving into that app space. We've been talking about the fact of, the kids and the technology. That's a category that's definitely leaned into the fact that these kids are on their devices a lot. So now that you're able to, from your phone, customize a pair of new kicks for the school year, it's a smart way to adapt. They definitely are much more tech savvy than the parents. And they're just, they have a device on them pretty much 24/7, whether or not they're at home learning on it or if they're at home watching it. To Mark's point on the consumption, it's definitely going to change now, right? A little less time. So does that mean less binging, or does that mean maybe a return to a little bit more traditional, programs? But either way, if you're going to get through it, like what this is all proven is the fact that you really have to have a multi-pronged approach to it. You got to have some digital. You have to have the CTV space. You have to have traditional TV. You can't. There is no one-stop shop for really reaching both that back-to-school consumer and the parent. Like their consumptions are so different, and definitely forever changed. So you really got to be creative in reaching both sets.
Yeah, no doubt. One last question for me before we get to a couple of these questions from the audience. I think this back to series allows us to get a little bit more personal with some of the things that we've experienced throughout all of this. You guys touch on that maybe a little bit and how back to school's affected you. I mean, I know there's kids in the house and how this process, either it's affecting you or how you think it's going to affect you as we move forward over the next few months.
Yeah, I think my kids go back next week, next Thursday, and we had kind of a non-traditional summer. We didn't have too many camps. We were pretty free flowing since I didn't have to be in an office and whatnot. But it'll be interesting to go. I'm somewhat excited to go back to a schedule, where they get very excited. So they can go back at a certain time and pick them up at that whole thing. But I think for my experience, is they need that face-to-face learning. It was a tough year with mostly hybrid, and that was one of our research points that we garnered from parents, that child development is really at the forefront this school year. And it's not a one size fits all. Again, some were successful with it and some weren't. Some are in the middle. But the child development and regaining, from a social and educational perspective, regaining for these kids. I'm excited for that for my kids. I think myself and our team at Viacom have been able to adapt to the work from home, and we've been successful with that. It's not. Every family is different in how with the kids at home, and it's been challenging. So I'm excited for the kids to get back to the real world. They need that.
Yep. We've been back a few weeks now, so it definitely has been great to be back to that schedule. As far as getting back and getting prepared for getting back, from a marketing standpoint, our house had a mixed bag. And, my oldest was really just about online, going on, picking out a couple of different things. Definitely kudos to Mark Wahlberg and his Wall Street original. From binging that this summer, my oldest definitely picked out a few things from Municipal clothing line. So that was interesting kind of content leading to a consumer. But then my daughter and my wife, they still had their weekend shopping thing amongst the soccer tournament. So they did the stores and did all that. And then, the youngest, he just got whatever mom and his sister picked out for him. But so they've gone back in somewhat of a normal kind of way. Right now, as a family, we're definitely dealing with the angst of testing because of with COVID. All of my kids are involved in several sports, so now we got word now that that's going to be done weekly. And what does that impact if not only they test positive, but if a teammate tests positive, who gets sit out? Because our big hope this year was for a regular sports season. Especially for my high schoolers, because last year was just so chaotic, and now we're into week 2 of the football season, and it's already like, all right.
The testing is going to be. That's a very good point, Dan. I think I mentioned earlier that my two younger ones have to test to go back. But let's say the whole town, various schools here, private, public, test, right? And let's say 10% are asymptomatic, they test positive, and then oh wait, my son was on that child's sports team, and all of a sudden the sports team shut down. My son tested negative, but these are just hypothetical, and but he's not going back to school. So it's a wide-ranging effect. The testing is going to have a wide-ranging effect on. Again, I'm not pro or con. It is what it is, and it's going to have a wide-ranging effect on, does back to school regularly scheduled all of a sudden become, turning into hybrid and virtual again. That's my worry.
That's definitely the fear and concern right now. So far I'd say, if not daily, every other day we get the email from the principal. There was one student that was, this, and we've already contacted the folks that may have been exposed. So there's definitely, a lot of concern around that. So, and just lingering hope that, everything does go well. Because to the point about the socialization, that was definitely a huge miss last year for a lot of the students. We're definitely glad to see it back in our house, get them out there and with their students. With a sophomore and a freshman in high school, it's kind of funny because they're both kind of like freshmen in a way.
Right.
Kind of like being new to that whole school experience, and actually lunchroom and things like that. So fingers crossed. Hopefully it continues to go smoothly.
Yeah. Well, as I say, what a time to be alive.
Tom, I think you said, or John Yarrington said, if you don't, every 2 weeks it seems to change, right?
Yeah, every 2 weeks it seems to change. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. Couple questions before we go from the audience. Question about trade schools. Are you guys seeing anything where trade schools are getting more involved? Because again, one of the big questions when you get into past high school is the cost of college now. Trade schools obviously lower cost. Have you guys seen any movement in that area at all?
We haven't necessarily seen an increase, but we do have a couple of trade schools that we work with addressably that target a couple of different factors, both geographic as well as some different social economic things that they've been targeting. But we haven't necessarily seen a large uptick in the area.
National linear cable, we've been consistent with that. I wouldn't say it's been exploding or retracting. It's been consistent for the last 12 months.
Yeah. One for you, Mark. How have the kids and family networks changed at all this year? Where are we at now? This part of the question is beyond me. Normally there are the hard 8, and over the years it went to more of a hard 10. So where are we now? I don't know what that means, but maybe you do.
In terms of inventory available in the fourth quarter, with the holiday season, used to be there were, of a 13-week fourth quarter, the middle 10 weeks were very difficult for direct response for us to get inventory within those 10 weeks. Then it got shortened the last, 5 years, sort of 8 weeks. So I guess I'll answer that two-part question, two-part answer. First off, on the inventory on Nickelodeon specifically, it sounds like that's what that question was around. We are expected to be extremely tight, little to no inventory on Nickelodeon in those middle 8 weeks, which has been consistent with years prior, the last number of years. It was a robust upfront, a lot of national dollars in fourth quarter for us, which means which is not very different from the last couple of years where you don't have much inventory nationally on Nickelodeon in those middle 8 weeks. And how kids and family networks, biggest thing for us this year has been Paramount Plus rebrand and Nickelodeon and the simultaneous release of certain shows on Paramount Plus or on our kit in Nickelodeon, Nicktoons, Nick Jr. Carly was a huge hit this year. Star Trek is launching on Paramount Plus, I believe in October, I think. So the use of Paramount Plus to launch as a launching pad for a number of our older shows which are relaunching. The way that our brand and network team has used Paramount Plus and the linear networks together has been a huge boost for both verticals. Yep. So, great. That's not something we had a year ago. So,
and I would just add, drafting off of Mark and his team's great job at selling that Hard 8. We definitely received interest and commitments within that window much earlier than we had in the past. Having inventory on those same nets, we definitely get to a little bit of trickle down there. So nice work, Mark.
Yeah, believe me, I wish I could say we had more of an opportunity to sell there in those weeks, but it's going to be consistent with prior years in that we're if there was some certain marketers looking for an opening, unfortunately we don't have it this year either. So.
Well, thank you both, guys. Appreciate it as always. Well done, and hopefully that the audience got some good tidbits out of this. And we always thank you for your roles as members of the PDMI. So appreciate it. Your next opportunity to attend a live online Take 20 episode is Wednesday, September 15th, when the Back 2 series turns its eye to events, sports, concerts, business expos, and more. And again, to that point, if you don't like where it is right now, maybe 2 weeks from now it'll change. Please visit thepdmi.com/take-20 to check out the upcoming schedule and register to attend today. Speaking of events, we're closing in on the PDMI's first in-person event in 2 years, PDMI West at the Hard Rock Hotel San Diego, October 4th through 6th. Badges are selling briskly and hotel rooms are booking now, though I need to remind you that the cutoff date to get into the PDMI's discounted room block is next Wednesday, September 8th. So don't miss out. Visit thepdmi.com/PDMI-West for more information and to register today. Thanks again for checking out this episode of the PDMI's Take 20. Enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your work week. Have a great holiday weekend. Be well. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.